I want to go, I call it assembly line. I want to do all similar things first. It'll save me time. I'm not going to completely finish this bird and then go on to this bird. I'm going to work on them both at the same time, okay? So for example, right now these birds, it looks like they're lighter on top of the head, which means the light's probably coming from above. But I'm going to add my own light source that I'm going to make up. That way I can go beyond what the picture shows and make these more three-dimensional than my picture is showing me, okay? So I'm gonna say this. I'm gonna say that the light is going in this direction on these birds. So it's hitting the top of his head, which would be hitting the back of his head, okay? So first thing I'm gonna do, just like we did when we did our, those spheres, I'm gonna do my underpainting. So on the top of his head, I want the top of his head to be a little lighter. Oh, one thing, make sure you don't have anything underneath your page. And I felt like I had some junk on my desk here. Okay, so anyhow, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna put white up here. I'm gonna let that white sort of fade because there's gonna be light blue in that area. And then I'm gonna say, you know what? He's got a bit of a cheek underneath his eyeball. So I'm gonna give him just a little bit of white underneath that eye where there's kind of a cheek there, okay? And then the top of his beak, definitely here it's gonna be brighter because the light's hitting there. So here's the very top of his beak is gonna be brighter, okay? And so I'm laying my whites down. And then I would do that back up here on this bird as well. So that's what I mean by, I'm not just gonna finish this whole bird, I'm gonna go work on the whole thing at once with all the areas that need to be of an underpainting, okay? Now, I'm not gonna do that right now just to save time, okay? But I'm telling you that that's what I would do if this was gonna be my whole thing. So I'm gonna concentrate on this one for demonstration purposes. My demonstration isn't too long. Now, the other areas, what are gonna be the darkest areas of this bird? Well, right now on his blue head, okay, you can see down here it's pretty dark. So I'm gonna use a black down here. That's gonna convert my blues into a darker version of blue, okay? So I'm gonna lay some black down there. I can see that his chest is orange, but it gets really dark down there. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna lay some dark here. And you might say, I thought you weren't supposed to put black underneath orange. Well, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put some black down, okay? And then what I'm gonna do is put brown over the top of it. So it turns it into a dark brown instead of a black. Then I could put my orange over it. So really what I'm doing is putting a dark brown underneath, but in order to make the dark brown, I'm mixing black and brown. So that area is gonna be darker, okay? Now, one other thing. I have something called I call this a color analyzer, okay? And what I do is, if I look through this picture, through this hole, I can have a better idea. Like, for example, you can see how light blue that is right there, okay? Now, if I change it to here, you can see how black that is, okay? But a lot of times kids will look at things and they'll just say, oh, this whole thing is the same blue, but it really isn't at all, okay? So I'm gonna do that. I laid my darks down. I can see that he's got a super bright color underneath that wing there. It's a yellowish green. So in that area, I'm gonna put a pretty solid coat. I wouldn't say solid coat, but I'm gonna put a lot of white down there because I want that to really look nice and bright later. And then the same thing with his chest here, which has got like a yellowish orange in there. So I did my underpainting on him, okay? Now, I'm gonna start adding my colors and I'm just gonna say, okay, right now I'm gonna work in the blue area. So I've got my light blue, I've got my royal blue, I've got my navy blue, okay? I got my black, I even got a gray, and I've got a purple. I think I wanna put a little purple in this guy because I think it would look cool. So I'm gonna take my light blue, and where it goes over the white, you can see that it gets a little bit lighter. And then I'm gonna start working in my royal blue into that light blue. So what I'm doing is like a smooth version of this bird first, okay? He's very textured. This bird's he's kind of a furry looking bird, for lack of a better word. He's not really furry, but his feathers are really fluffy and pretty textured. So I'm using my navy blue now. Now in around the eye, he's got a little bit of a cheek, and I'm gonna put some navy blue in there because I want it to go a little darker. And in this part of the eye, he looks a little bit darker. So I'm gonna put some navy blue in that area, okay? So I'm adding my little bit of blues, and I can always have light blue. Here's a little gray I'm gonna add just because I wanna make his cheek a little bit lighter there. And I can add some white to there and so on. So I'm doing sort of a real smooth version of the bird first. Okay? Okay, there you go. Now, his beak. I could jump over to the beak right now. So I need, obviously, some yellows and oranges and things like that. So there's a yellow, here's a bright yellow, here's a light orange, here's a darker orange, here's a red, here's another yellow. So I've got a lot of colors here. And what I'm gonna do on that beak, let's kind of zoom in. You can kind of see the beak a little bit. This beak, to me, looks really flat, doesn't it? It just looks like an orange shape. And I know in real life that bird doesn't have a flat beak. Okay, so that's where I go beyond the picture. And I say, okay, that beak is becoming red. So I'm gonna put some yellow up here. And where the yellow goes over the white, the yellow gets pretty bright. Then I'm gonna start working in my orange into that beak. So now the yellow starts becoming an orange, like so. Okay, and then maybe I go, okay, he's got some red in here. I'm gonna go with some red in there. So his beak's pretty colorful now. But he's got a base color of white, really made a difference. So the beak is going from light to dark. Now the bottom beak, you know that's gonna be darker because it's underneath the top beak, okay? But on this picture, I can't really make it out. It's not very good. So I could do one of two things. I'm gonna make up what it's gonna look like, or you could find another picture of a bird that you could see better. But for this case, I think I can do without that. So how do you make red darker? I'm gonna go with a really dark brown. So once again, I might lay some, I'm gonna lay just a little bit of an edge of black right here and put a little black down, just a little bit, okay? Let me zoom in just a little bit with this one. So I put a little black down. I'm gonna put some dark brown down here. So I'm doing some dark brown on that bottom beak. Now I'm gonna lay my red on there, and that red's gonna get a lot darker because of that dark brown and that black, and it's gonna separate that bottom part of his beak so I can see that just a little bit better, okay? Now, up on top here, he's got a real shine on his beak. It's really white, so I'm gonna come back in here with some white and add some of that. Okay, now I'm gonna come back to that beak later, but for right now, I'm gonna show you how to do the texture on the bird, okay? Now, you can see this bird's got a very heavy texture, okay? So I'm not gonna use the side of my pastel like this, just some skinny little line. I'm gonna use the broad side of my pastel so I can make a big fat stroke like this on my finger, okay? And so I'm gonna start up here with some fat white strokes. They're gonna go like this, and the strokes are here, and I'm gonna fade them away as they get close into the more dark area, so I'm not doing it as heavy, but up here I'm going pretty heavy. Okay, then I'm gonna go with my light blue strokes, and I'm gonna start throwing light blue in there. Okay, now this bird's kind of like you know how dogs, like their fur kind of goes away from their face? You know, it goes kind of up their nose and down their head and away from their face. And I think the bird does the same thing. So I'm gonna have my strokes kind of going away from the front of the face. So here's my light blue strokes. Now I'm gonna start going with my royal blue strokes that are in here. Okay, and then I'm gonna go with my navy blue strokes that are in between some of these white strokes and down in this area. And then I'm gonna go with some of my black strokes down here, and I'm gonna fade those up into here. So I really put a lot of texture, okay? And don't be chicken about it. Don't be like, I'm afraid to put too much in there. What I wanna do here is I really want those to be pretty bold, because you gotta realize this bird, this bird's only about, he's about 2.5 inches across, okay? This is like 8 inches. So it's like 4 times the size. So just like if you were doing someone's nose close up, okay? You were taking their nose, which is 2 inches, and converting it to 5 feet across, the little pores on the nose would be greatly enlarged. Got that? So the feathers on this guy become greatly enlarged here. So down here, he's got some darker strokes in this area around his eye, and so on. So I'm laying these strokes down, and in some cases, you know, on this bird, he's got some strokes that you can barely see. So I can always come back in here and with my finger kind of blur some of those strokes, or I can go bolder. So up on top here, I'm gonna go with my royal blue in between some of these white strokes so they really pop out. So I'm really going pretty heavy with this texture. Okay, now, that eyeball, see the eyeball? Now the eyeball, like a lot of things, it's got a dark pupil, it's got a white shiny spot, and it's really got a lot of black around it. So I'm gonna go and do the eyeball. I'm gonna take the edge of my black and sort of draw the circular eye. Here's the pupil right here. And I'm gonna leave a white spot. So I'm gonna take my white and put my white right in here like this. I wanna make a white shiny spot on there. Now maybe my white spot's bigger than it is on the picture. I don't care, I like it, okay? So I'm gonna go like that. Now is when, if you're working in a sharp area, you can use your white and black pencil, okay? Now his eye is kind of a reddish brown color. And you might say, I like that color. You might say, yeah, I want to change it a little bit. That's up to you. So I'm going to take sort of this, I got this reddish brown. I call it a brick red. It's this color here. And I'm going to throw some of that in the eyeball right now. Now that's brighter than the way it looks on the picture, but I'm going to lay it down as a base, okay? Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back in with my black, and I'm going to add more black to the top because his eye is underneath an eyebrow, just like yours is. So his eyebrows protrude and they cast a little shadow on his eye here. So the top of his eye is going to be darker than the bottom of that eye. Okay? So I'll zoom in here just a little bit. And you can see now the top of the eye is darker than the bottom. Now I want to make that a little brighter. So I'm just going to work, I'm just going to touch this with just a little bit of gold here. Just a little bit, because I want to make that a little shiny looking, okay? Now, I'm going to go with my pencil. I'm at the edge of my pastel again, and I'm going to draw a nice dark line up on top here. And this bird, if you look up close, birds are funny. They're almost like cats. Looks like they got eyeshadow on. Looks like he's got black around his eye. So I'm going to take my black, and I'm going to add some black into this area here, and some black into there, and I'm going to make it a little darker around the outside of his eye, okay? And I'll carefully take my finger and kind of blend that in, okay? Now this is where you want to show a little more detail. Now right below his eye is some more feathers. So right here, I'm going to take my white pencil and add some texture here. If you look in close, there's a little texture underneath that eye, okay? And then let's see, above his eye up here, he's going to have some light strokes of feathers kind of up in this area. So that's how you start getting more detail, okay? Now, it looks like my bright spot got a little too gigantic, so I'm going to take my pencil and just eliminate some of that bright spot there and kind of give it an edge a little bit. And if you're thinking, now I can hardly see the pupil. Well, what you could do is just take your white and just do a little bit of a line around the pupil here. See that? And then what I'm going to do is fade that into the rest of the eye, like so. Now I've identified that pupil a little bit more. Got that? Okay. So you can see up here, the bird's got these, I don't know what you call them. This is like his nostril area. So you might want to do that with a black and draw that in there. We used to have a parakeet. My son had a parakeet when he was little. And this little nostril area, I didn't know this, but that's how you kind of tell if they're male or female. I can't remember the difference, but there's some difference between males and females up there. We didn't know that, and he didn't know that his parrot was a female. And he had a male name for it, and one day we decided, hey, you know, the parrot's name was Packer. You know, Packer's a girl. You want to change your name? He's like, nah, let's just keep it as Packer. So there we go. He called it Packer because the bird was green and gold. Okay, so I've got more detail in there, okay? And so you got the idea. You guys got it? I could go on and show you more stuff. Next, doing a background. I'm just gonna switch. This is like a cooking show. I put it in the oven and it comes out like that. Now he's a little further along, okay? So what I'm gonna do when I did the background up here, just like when I did the bush, what I did for the background was I laid colors down first. I put black in here and I put some white up here, and then I started laying my greens over the top of that, okay? And you know, if I want my greens to be more yellow, I can add some more yellow up here. But what I like to have is my background more blurry. Because what it'll do is if you have a blurry background, the subject is more focused and detailed, and it's gonna look more three-dimensional, okay? So I'm going to turn this off for just a minute here.